The film begins with a group of young men wearing masks and holding weapons in their hands. We see at their feet the bodies of slaughtered pigs, hanging and wrapped in plastic. They open the pig's belly, and we find in each pig's belly a girl, tied up, wearing a breathing device, and unconscious. We then cut to an officer who arrives at a warehouse in his car and finds many kidnapped girls inside. The girls are relieved that someone has found them and will rescue them from the gang. The officer points his gun at one of the gang members and asks, "Where are the rest of the girls?" The gang member tells him to check his phone. The officer's phone rings, and he opens it to find a video of a kidnapped girl screaming and begging her father to save her. The officer collapses to the ground in shock. Then, a man appears, introduces himself, and says, "I am the president." He adds, "The best thing is that my boss calls me the president." We realize that he is not the actual president but works for him. The officer begs him to spare his daughter, breaking down in tears. The president tells him, "Stop crying, and tell me who informed you about this place." The officer replies, "I received an audio message, and I don't know who sent it." He plays the message for him. In the message, a voice says, "The gang, Rao, is holding 40 missing girls, and I know their location." The president tells him, "I'll give you 15 days to find out who sent you this recording." We then cut to a young man with a little girl, fixing his machine. The girl says, "Baby, I'm going to be late for school again." We learn that the young man's name is Baby. He replies, 2 minutes. She says, "Every day you make me late for school because of this old bike. Just put it in a museum already." He responds, "Don't get upset, Binky, my love." We learn that the girl's name is Binky. Suddenly, a car passes by them and splashes water on Binky's clothes from a puddle. She gets upset and calls for Baby. Baby finishes fixing the bike, and they ride off, chasing the car that splashed water on her. The car's driver sees them and speeds away, but Baby takes a shortcut and catches up to the car. He confronts the driver, scolds him, and demands that he apologize to his daughter. Binky doesn't hear their conversation, but the man apologizes to her. Baby says, "That's it, I won't hit you. Just go." It's clear he just wants to make his daughter happy. The next day, Baby is taking Binky to school again. He drops her off, and she yells at him for making her late again. She enters the classroom, and the teacher greets her, asking, "Why are you late today?" Binky replies, "The bike broke down on the way." The teacher sees Baby and asks Binky if he's her brother. Binky says yes, and the teacher lets her in. Later, Baby is taking Binky to school on the 3rd day, and she tells him he's always making her late. He says, "The most important thing is your safety." She gets angry, pushes him to the ground, and says, "Go tell that to my teacher." Binky enters the classroom, and the teacher seems impressed by Baby. We then cut to the president, who is driving his car. We see a girl, tied up and stuffed in the trunk. We learn her name is Daisy. He stops in the middle of the road, and suddenly realizes Daisy has disappeared from the car. He starts searching for her. Later, Binky is sitting alone when Baby approaches her and asks, "Who hurt your face like this?" She replies, "My friend Ronnie." He asks, "Why did he do that to you?" She says, "He called me a snitch, so I told him my name is Binky, and he hit me." Baby asks, "Did you hit him back?" She says, "No." He asks, "Why not?" She replies, "You taught me not to be violent with people." He says, "Did he apologize to you?" She says, "No." He tells her to hit him back just like he hit her. Binky stands up and hits Ronnie. Later, the teacher asks to see Binky and Baby at the temple. While they're talking, the president crashes into Baby's car. Binky gets angry and starts arguing with the president, insulting him and saying, "What school are you even in?" People laugh at him because he's a dwarf. Baby steps in, holds Binky back, and apologizes to the president, saying, "She's just a child." The president walks away. They go looking for Daisy, and the teacher asks Baby to take her to the police station. It turns out the teacher had hidden Daisy under a blanket in the car. We learn that the teacher saw Daisy at the temple and Daisy asked for her help. The teacher takes Daisy out of the car and enters the police station. But Binky runs after the teacher and follows her into the station. Baby gets nervous and follows them inside. Inside, Baby confronts the teacher, yelling, "How could you bring a child to a place like this?" The teacher replies, "I didn't know she was following me." The officer then enters, and we realize it's the same officer whose daughter was kidnapped by the gang. He becomes suspicious of Baby when he sees him with the girl who escaped from the gang, thinking Baby might be the one who sent him the recording. He learns Baby's name and address but lets him go. It's clear Baby is hiding something, but we don't know what. Later, the officer is driving with Daisy in the car and calls the president, telling him Daisy is with him. They find out someone has filed a complaint against the officer, and the president becomes suspicious. Finally, we see Baby putting his daughter to bed and covering her. The power goes out, so he goes outside to check. He finds the president and his men waiting for him. Baby asks, "How can I help you?" The president's men grab him and beat him, accusing him of pretending not to know anything and being the one who leaked their information. Baby insists, I don't know anything, and I didn't say anything. At the same time, we see the teacher searching online for a picture of baby, and old pictures of him appear, showing that he was a police officer named Satya Varma. We return to baby again and see him being beaten by the gang. Then the police officer arrives with the girl and returns her to the gang. Baby starts thinking to himself and says that 6 years ago, there was a man who was evil to the wicked and a god to the righteous. This motivates baby, and he gets up and fights the gang, killing all of them alone. It becomes clear that there are marks and wounds on his back, and the teacher arrives and sees him killing them. After that, we see 2 children going to school, and when they open the classroom door, they find a drunk man sleeping inside. When the child asks him to leave because it's a school, the drunk man hits the child with a pen on his face. Later, we see the parents of the students gathered in front of the school, demanding the police. The police arrive, knock on the door, and tell them that this is a public school and they can't do this, warning that they will be jailed. The drunk men pretend to be police officers, but it's obvious they are drunk. One of the police officers calls for Sergeant Baby and asks him to hurry. Baby arrives, enters the classroom with them, closes the door, and starts asking them questions from the curriculum. If they can't answer, he hits them with a baton. None of them can answer, and he keeps hitting them. Afterward, Baby leaves, followed by the drunk man. The parents cheer for Baby and tell him that he managed to get them out without breaking the door or windows. Everyone applauds him. Next, we see an old man named Nunji. He is strangling another man, surrounded by many people dressed in white, and Nunji kills the man. We learn that Nunji is the real leader of the gang and says he killed the men because he was supposed to deliver a girl to an agent, but before he could, the men assaulted her. Later, we see him calling for a barber named Badrinath. He tells him that the girl who was assaulted by the men was his daughter, which is why he killed him. Badrinath breaks down and starts crying. The gang leader grabs his face and forces him to smile. Seeing that he is still angry, Nunji takes Badrinath's hand, which holds a razor, and points it toward his own neck, telling him to kill him. But Badrinath can't do it and screams. Nunji laughs and says, "I am a lion." Later, we see Baby sitting with his mother, who has brought him to meet a potential bride's family. It seems Baby is playing on his phone and isn't interested. He sits with the bride, who tells him that he is good and famous, but she loves someone else. Baby is happy that she doesn't agree to marry him. Afterward, we see Baby and his mother leaving, and his mother is upset with him for rejecting the bride. Their conversation is interrupted by a young child selling tissues, who asks Baby to buy one. Baby tells the child that if he takes him to school, he will go. The child is very surprised by this and says he doesn't want money but asks for food because he is starving. A girl working with him, who has one bad eye, comes to Baby and asks him to give them something, but she doesn't speak to him because if their boss sees them, he will hit them. Suddenly, their boss appears and hits the child with an iron rod on his head. The child cries and asks why he is standing there wasting time. The child tells him that the men said he would take him to school. The gang leader looks at Baby and asks him how many schools he plans to open to take all the children to school. He tells Baby to leave before he leaves marks and wounds on his face. Baby leaves but stops for a moment, and his mother asks him to listen to a song until he returns to her. She tells him she is afraid. He reassures her that he will be fine. She says she isn't afraid for him but for the criminals. Baby laughs and returns to the criminals. As soon as they see him, Baby hits their leader, and they all gather and attack him, but Baby overpowers them. They run away, but he chases them and keeps hitting them. Their leader calls the police to save them from Baby, but they don't recognize him. Baby laughs and introduces himself as a police officer. Later, we see the criminals in the hospital. The doctor asks them if they were in an accident or something, and we learn that the doctor's name is Mira. The leader tells her that one man, the police officer, beat them all and brought them here. The doctor calls the police assistant and asks if he did this to them. He says it wasn't him but his boss. She tells him to call his boss. Baby arrives, and she asks him if he did this to them. He says yes. She tells him that just because he is a police officer, he can't do whatever he wants, and they have lost a lot of blood, with some having fractures. He asks her what she would think if this happened to an orphan child. She asks what he means. He tells her that they are criminals who harm children. One of them pushed a hot iron rod into a girl's eye, causing her to lose her vision. They force children to beg or torture them. He tells her he won't apologize to these criminals. Mira sympathizes with him and is attracted to him. She asks if he is married. He says no. She tells him her shift ends at 8:30 p.m. and suggests they meet afterward. Indeed, they meet after her shift ends on a bus, and they start getting to know each other. Baby tells her that he hasn't married because of his failed relationships. And then we go to the gang leader Nunji, and his son asks to be appointed as a minister, so Nunji appoints him as the Minister of Finance. The next day, Baby gets into the car to go to work, and he finds his mother waiting in the car to be dropped off, but he refuses, saying it's a government car and he can't use it for personal purposes. He then goes to Mira and takes her to drop her off, and she tells him that it's a government car, but he says that the government belongs to the people, and he drops her off. He then watches her as she sings. He also distributes juice, and his mother is there too. Then they go to Bibi's house, and Mira and Bibi's mother get to know each other. Bibi's mother tells him that she doesn't approve of this marriage and that she won't accept it again after he takes her to her house. Bibi then takes Mira home, and he is very upset. Mira asks him why he's upset, but he refuses to talk. He asks her what happened with his mother while they were sitting together, and she tells him that his mother is very kind and said she wouldn't stand in the way of her son's happiness. Mira also tells him that his mother said she doesn't have a mother and allowed her to call her mom. It becomes clear that they get along very well. Bibi is very happy with what he hears. Then we go to Bibi, who is at the police station, and a man and a woman come in looking for their daughter, who has been missing for 3 days. She was at school that day and didn't return. Bibi takes them and starts searching the school and the route she took home. It turns out that there is a dog on the girl's way home waiting for her because she feeds him, and every time a big black car passes, the dog barks and chases it. Bibi suspects that the person who kidnapped the girl is in that car. He starts checking the cameras and revisits the entire area, conducting searches and blocking roads. Eventually, he follows the dog to a place, and the dog starts walking in the direction the girl went. Bibi, the police, and the girl's parents follow the dog, and it leads them to the girl's bag, which has the name Amba on it. Bibi searches through her belongings, and while he is searching, the girl appears, looking very tired and unable to walk. The gang has poured gasoline on her, and as she moves, gasoline drips from her body. One of the gang members throws a lit match at the gasoline, and the fire spreads toward the girl. Bibi sees her before the fire reaches her and runs to save her, but unfortunately, before he can reach her, the girl catches fire. He removes her clothes and tries to extinguish the fire with them. Her parents are devastated, and Bibi carries her and puts her in an ambulance that was with them, but unfortunately, the girl dies, and her parents are heartbroken. Bibi attends her funeral as her body burns, and he decides to seek justice for her. He finds out that the person who did this is the son of a criminal. They go and ask about his whereabouts, but they are told that he has been missing for 3 days. Bibi drives away, and suddenly stops the car on the road. He throws a cigarette butt on a pile of hay, and Nunji's son emerges, burning with his hands tied, and dies on the spot. The police and ambulance gather, and Babaji comes and asks to see his son and talk to him. They take Bibi to see his son, and Nunji is shocked by the sight. The investigator comes and says it's a case of brutal murder and torture for 3 days, and it becomes clear that it's the same way the girl who burned died, and that Bibi avenged her. Nunji asks Bibi to find out who did this to his son, and he is devastated. Bibi laughs and tells him that his son was a murderer and an abuser, and anyone who wanted him dead, like the girl's father or mother, or even himself, could have done it. He leaves and walks away. Then we go back to Bibi and Ram Civic, as they throw the bodies of the gang members into the river, and Bibi notices that one body is missing. Then we see the teacher, who has kidnapped one of the gang members and is driving away with him in her car. It turns out that the teacher was also a police officer, and her name is Adhira. We find out that she is undercover, monitoring the gang and trying to take them down. We also learn that she was the one who sent the record to the officer earlier. She hands the person over to the police officers, and they say his name is Pablo. Then we go to the teacher as she returns to Bibi's house, and Ram Civic, Bibi's assistant, asks her to leave. He tells her that he knows who she is and that there have been enough problems. She tells him that she loves Goshi and Satya as well, and asks him whose daughter Goshi is. He tells her. Then we go back in time to Bibi, who is standing and meeting Myra's father and her family at a cafe. Her father is reluctant, fearing for his daughter's safety, as Bibi is a cop and his life is uncertain, and something could happen to him or his daughter at any moment. But Bibi reassures him and talks to him, and the father starts to agree with Bibi. Suddenly, several cars enter the cafe, and they are gang members. Everyone runs and hides except Bibi, who keeps fighting the gang members and killing them, and he kills all of them. The fight ends, and Myra's father comes out and refuses Bibi after seeing what he is exposed to and that Bibi or his daughter could die at any moment. Then we go to Bibi as he goes to arrest Sasaji on the day of his son's funeral, but everyone present attacks Bibi. Sasaji is shaving, and suddenly the barber slits his throat with a razor in revenge for his daughter. They capture Bibi and humiliate him, calling him an old eagle, and Nunji is imprisoned. His family comes and asks him to sign the bail papers, but he refuses and tears the paper. Then we go to Mira as she leaves work, and Bibi stops her and talks to her. She tells him that she was afraid for him when they were shooting at him, that something might happen to him, and she cries. She gives him a choice between her and leaving the police, and he chooses the police. He stops a tuk-tuk for her, and she leaves, but she comes back and hits him. He tells her that he loves his job and loves her and that he can't give up either of them. Then we see that Myra's father has agreed to the marriage, and Bibi and Mira get married. They seem very happy together, and Mira gets pregnant. After a while, she gives birth to a daughter, and they name her Goshi. Goshi grows up, and a year passes, and they celebrate her birthday. It seems like they are a complete family. Then we go to Bibi as he asks Mira if they can have a brother for Goshi. Her mother-in-law also wants them to have a brother for Goshi, and the grandmother comes to protect Goshi. Mira and Bibi stand in the kitchen talking, and Mira asks him what kind of wife she is, and Bibi holds her face. Suddenly, she is shot and falls to the ground. Nunji appears, holding the barber, and slaughters him with the barber's razor. Bibi is then shot twice, and Nunji pulls out a belt full of teeth and starts hitting Bibi with it. Bibi is in shock, not understanding what is happening. Nunji hears the little girl's voice and goes upstairs, shoots Bibi's mother, and she dies. He goes in and finds the child in the bathtub, turns on the water, and leaves her to drown in the bathtub. He goes back down to Bibi and tells him that he is not an old eagle but a hungry eagle, and that he waited 150 days to eat him and become the king of the eagles. Then he puts explosives in the microwave, sets the timer for 5 minutes, turns on the gas, and leaves. Suddenly, Mira wakes up to the sound of the child crying, goes to the girl, finds her mother-in-law dead, grabs the child, and takes her down to Bibi. She wakes him up and tells him to promise her that he will take their daughter and raise her away from all this and leave the police. He promises her, and she repeats her question about what kind of wife she is. He hugs her and tells her that she is not his wife but his mother, and then she dies, and the house explodes. Then we go to the teacher as she cries after hearing Bibi's story. She says that Bibi died 6 years ago at the time of the incident, and now all he wants is to live with his daughter. At the same time, Bibi and Goshi return. The teacher hugs Goshi. Then we go to the next day, and Bibi puts Goshi on the school bus and gets her on. Then his phone rings, and it's Nunji and his gang, who are attacking the officers and people. Nunji tells Bibi to look behind him, and Bibi looks and sees the bus his daughter is on about to fall into the water. He tries to catch up with it, but he can't, and he jumps into the water after the bus. He keeps saving the children, and the ambulance and police come and help him. He saves all the students but can't find his daughter. He goes down to look for her and finally finds her, unconscious. He thinks she is dead, takes her out of the water, and leaves her with the teacher and the doctor. It turns out that Ronnie, Goshi's friend, is still underwater, so he runs and catches up with him, performs CPR, and revives Ronnie. Goshi also wakes up, and all the students are fine. Bibi blames himself for what happened to the children. Then we go to an officer who is sitting and eating, and a woman comes to him and gives him her gold, asking him to find her daughter. He tells her that her daughter is dead and that her daughter is not important enough to look for, and he hits her with a pen. The mother leaves, devastated, and tells her family what happened. They pray to God to take revenge on the officer, and the lights go out. Bibi appears, wearing a police uniform, and kills the officer who was exploiting people. The police come and ask the officer's assistant who did this, and he tells them it was Bibi. The police say that Bibi died 6 years ago and refer him to a mental hospital. Then Bibi appears again, defending the people of the city and disappearing. The people cheer for him and call him a hero. Then we see many workers dead because they fell while working on a building. Among them is a mother, and her son, a child, is crying over her. The workers refuse to work until safety harnesses are installed. Bhima, Nunji's brother, tells them that he will install safety harnesses, so they continue working. He gives the child who was crying over his mother money to buy chocolates. Then we go to Bhima, who is sitting in one of the buildings where the workers are working. Suddenly, there is a noise, and his men go to check the source of the noise. Bibi appears and kills all of them. Then he goes to Bhima, and they fall from the building like the workers who died. The workers and the child whose mother died gather around Bhima's body, and the child eats the chocolates happily. Then we go to the teacher, Bibi's assistant, and Goshi, who sense movement in the area and realize that Nunji's men are there. They go out and lock the door on Goshi, and they start fighting Nunji's men, but they are outnumbered and can't overcome them. Then we go to Bibi as he is walking, and Nunji calls him, asking him to meet at the port. Bibi goes there, and it turns out that Goshi, the teacher, and a group of girls are trapped in a shipment on a ship. We see Bibi heading toward Nunji to save his daughter, but Nunji has set a trap for him and hangs Bibi by his feet with a rope. He orders one of his men to kill him, but Myra's ghost appears. She asks Bibi to save Goshi, so Bibi wakes up and fights Nunji's men, killing them. He fights Nunji and knocks him to the ground, then runs into a truck that has a horse inside. Bibi rides the horse and kills the rest of Nunji's men. He goes to save his daughter, the teacher, and the other girls in the trucks, and then returns to Nunji. Goshi tells Nunji that she knows he killed her mother and asks him to apologize, and she will forgive him, but he refuses. Goshi tells Bibi to deal with him, and she and the teacher leave. Bibi tells Nunji that he is the reason for what happened to his son and that he brought this upon himself. He says that his son is not to blame because children turn out the way they are raised. Bibi leaves him, but then he sees that all the girls he had kidnapped come and attack him, and here the film ends. I hope you liked the summary. Goodbye.